All right. Welcome everyone to the Grace Accept Evolve podcast. My name's Ray, and how you doing today, James?
I am fantabulous. I was going to think of something else to say, but it just rolls off the tongue so well. So
All the time.
I'll
It's
stick with
great.
that.
I
Yeah.
love it. Awesome. So, today James and I are going to be talking about something that's been coming up for weeks. I think I've wanted to talk about this for weeks, but I've been waiting for it to be the right time, or actually I've almost wanted to wait for it to fade as a topic and us not talk about it for some reason.
Hmm.
And as I say, for some reason, the reason came to me. And
Okay.
that reason is because I'm not going to say it's a controversial topic.
Hmm.
I just don't know how to navigate the conversation sometimes or how to talk about it because some people have a very passionate view about what I want to talk about. So
Hmm.
but I feel like that's why we're here. We're here to give differing views, perspectives, and have good conversations.
Yeah. There, there's
So
a
yeah.
there's a current saying. It says, "I'm here for it." You
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here for it. Same. Same. Yeah.
No, it's just
Here for it. Yeah, no, it's true. It's definitely true. And
right.
I think it's really cool to have conversations like this. I think
Okay.
they're interesting at times too. So,
Okay.
um, so yeah, fun fact, today is usually me and James's like administrative day that we talk about podcasting things. And I was like, hey, can we just like talk about something? Because it's been heavy on my mind. It keeps coming up in my life. So I feel like
Hmm.
we should talk about it. And the topic is, or what I would like to just flesh out with James, because he and I have both differing views on it. Maybe we have similar ones, maybe we have like very opposite ones, but it's basically around this concept, idea, or practice. I think a practice is a better way to put it, is being specific about what we watch or what we don't watch, what we let into our awareness versus what we just let infringe on our awareness. Um, and being, I don't know if particular is the right word, maybe specific is a good word again, of like where we go, what we watch, what we allow into our spirit and our, what would you call it, James? Our consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this can come through TikToks. It can come through movies. It can come through the news. It can come through Facebook. It can come like all of that. I would even argue a lot of it probably comes through social media, and then secondary sources that are more like you have to go to them cognizantly or consciously, because social media unfortunately is very unconscious for most people. But like movies, like you have to go out and pick this movie, or this show that you're going to watch. So that's what we're going to talk about today, like what we watch versus what we don't watch and why we do those things. So um I'll share. I don't want to talk too much. What are your thoughts about that, James? When I came to you with this topic, what were your thoughts on it?
I'm here for it.
Yeah, we're here for it. Okay, great. Okay, great.
Yeah, go for it.
Um,
Yeah, no,
awesome.
in general, I'm open to the discussion. Let's see what I'm open. So, and playfulness
Okay,
too. So, there's a level of playfulness, open mindedness to see what comes about. See what comes
great.
out.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, you're one of the, because I know a lot of people that say this, but you're actually the first person maybe that I knew in my everyday life, not just through social media and people like giving us tips or things like that. You were like one of the first persons in my life that I knew did this.
Hmm.
And I was like, hey, did you watch this movie? I remember asking you years ago. It's like, hey, did you watch this show? It was really good. And you were like, no, I don't watch stuff like that. I was like, oh. And I was like, why? And I don't know if you remember what it was. I don't know if we want to say what it was.
I
I
don't
think
remember.
it was about the Central Park Five,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
documentary they made about them.
Okay.
And I found it very enlightening for me. These were issues I didn't really even know were around. So I was like, did you watch this? You were like, no, no, I did not. And I was like, oh, really? It's really, everybody's watching it right now. And you're like, I will not. And I was like, okay. So it's hard. I don't want to quote you on why. Maybe you can tell me a little bit why, like refreshing your memory. Is there a reason why you don't watch things like that, or what would you like to
Well,
share
I
there?
would let's delve into what was there a recent event that brought this topic up and that made it kind of overwhelmingly strong?
Yeah,
How about
so
we get into that and then
this
let's go
happens
from
a
there.
lot to me when I watch documentaries or docuseries or even like reenactments of real things, which
Hmm.
aren't always documentaries, but they're
Right.
like based on true stories, which is what I think that was what the one I shared with you a few years ago was not a documentary. But I did watch a recent documentary called Sins of Our Mother,
Mm.
which was about a woman in the LDS church that had been married a few times. And she had an older son and two, like a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old, and maybe like a 24, 25-year-old. And she was like on her third marriage. And it basically, she found a man in the LDS church. He fell in love with her. He told her all these things about being a spiritual leader and like the degrees of people, whether people were light or dark, and the degree of their lightness or their darkness. And basically, she had her two children, her younger ones, murdered. And I watched this whole docu-series. It was painful. It was sad. It's been a really long time since I cried during a documentary like that. And I recommended it for people in the spiritual community to watch, or I would just say friends, but they're very spiritual. And somebody was very adamant and they said, no, you shouldn't. And I was like, I pushed back. I said, no, you should. Because when we are spiritual and we have these beliefs, there are people like that out there. And to believe that they're not, and to not be aware of these people and to believe that all these spiritual teachers are good, which is what I think sometimes happens. That, you know, and so I'm not sure because we didn't get into why this person said no, and I kind of tried to explain why I was saying yes. But that's my feelings about it. Is like we should be aware of these people, and seeing things like this does help reinforce to me that not everybody has good intentions when they tell you they're a spiritual teacher, leader, or they have extra information from God. That's what
Mm.
I feel like people can easily fall for people saying, I have the information from God. He told me this person was a light or a dark. And I'm just like, I see it all the time. I see it
Mm.
all the time. So, yeah, that was the specific instance.
Okay. All right. And so how did it end? How did it resolve? Did it resolve? Is it unresolved? What's
Me
the
and this person,
conclusion?
or
Yeah. What's the
oh, yeah, no.
result? What's the end result? Yeah.
We just, I guess we agreed to disagree. We just stopped talking about it. They didn't want to talk about it, and the conversation kind of ended there. Which
Okay.
which I was fine with, because I do know that there are some people that don't like to consume that kind of content. But I think over time, I have been consuming more of that content, especially when it comes to spiritual topics and spiritual
Mhm.
teachers. Um, and it makes people uncomfortable. I've noticed that be a very prominent response when I'm like, "Hey, let's listen to this. Let's look at this cult that started or this thing that happened." And most of the time people tell me no. And I'm just
Mm.
like, "Why? What are we afraid of here?" And for me as a channeler, I like to watch those things because I think for me, why I like to watch it is because I think everybody is vulnerable to getting to being narcissistic or falling into power when it comes to people thinking you have more answers than they do. That's what I think actually happens over time. Maybe people don't go into it with those intentions, but I think if you don't humble yourself constantly and be aware of the things that come with that kind of information or that kind of belief people put in you, that people do start believing in you, and then you start to believe in yourself in a
Mm.
way that's not, it's not about spirituality, it's about something else.
Okay. So something's coming up, and so uh, we touched on this a little bit before we started recording, and you were mentioning about the conversation going into speaking about New Orleans and so forth and so on. And so I share this quite frequently with people here locally, but in my experience, one of the benefits of living in New Orleans is that there's a smorgasbord of experiences happening every day. Like literally, you remember that day you came down here and we drove to all these different parts of the city and went to the meetings, and we saw the panhandler with the sign on our way to a meditation meeting. And then, so I even share more. We were going to lunch in one part of town, and we had an experience, just to describe for listeners the essence of New Orleans and the energy of New Orleans. We were in one part of town by the river, just having these lovely talks and conversations. I think we even stopped by the lake. We had breakfast at one location at a health restaurant, and then we went to lunch. Drove around, travel, went to lunch. Saw on our way to lunch, we saw, I think we saw somebody's clothes on fire. Someone had got kicked out, and their clothes were on the sidewalk burning.
I couldn't remember if they were setting them on fire or just throwing them out.
It was
They
on
were
fire.
on fire. Okay.
We went somewhere else, and there was a car. It was kind of on the street, but then kind of on the sidewalk. That the tires were slashed, and some vulgar messages were spray painted on the car. The windows were busted in, and then we leave from there, and we're headed to meditation in a whole nother part of town. And then let's just say there was a very candid message on a panhandler sign as we were driving there. And then we proceeded to meditation. And so one of the beauties of living in the city, at least from my perspective, is that I get to see real time all these myriads of experiences. Like, even when I don't want to see them, like I could just be going to the grocery store. I'm going to see this person maybe on drugs. I'm going to see panhandlers. I'm going to see homelessness. I'm going to see people expressing themselves in a whole different way. Somebody might have just came out from a night of partying, and someone's sleeping on the street. Somebody's driving in a maybe a Bentley, but a Mercedes. Someone's on a bicycle, maybe texting him. So there's all these different things that I'm surrounded by daily. And again, the beauty of it is that it exposes my awareness. Like, I would literally, in this city, because New Orleans is considered a big city, but I call it a little big city, just because the landmass is way much. Even back, you know what I mean. Even where you are, the landmass is way much huger than New Orleans, and so I would probably have to stay in a 4 or 5 block radius to live in this city and think that the whole world was like, my neighborhood or my 4 or 5 block radius. And some people do that. I mean, some people literally stay in their part of town, live in a bubble, and only really leave out of that area for specific purposes or reasons. So, not myself. I travel all over the city. So again, to go back to the point, it's like I see all that like every day. Even if I don't want to see it, I see it. And so I'm aware that the world isn't one color, isn't one way, isn't one set of experiences. And so, yeah, and I could expound on it more a little bit later, but that's just what was coming up for me. It's like some things of that nature, I see it like daily. And so I guess to go further, when it comes to, and we'll obviously go further into it, when it comes to my entertainment time or my like relaxation time, or I get my wind down time, I'm like, yeah, I need to laugh. I need something that's feel good. I need something that's whatever fantasy normal that's in my head or matches what's in my head. I just need something just calming and chill. Just because I've been all day, every day. If one lives in the city, every day, all day. If you're out and about, actually living in the city. When I say living, active and mixing and mingling with people. I hear it all the time. People walk up and you experience. I'm sure you experienced it to a degree while you're here as well. People walk up all the time. They got stories, and I remember just recently. Now I kind of feel like I'm rambling, but I was doing some volunteer work, and I saw the lady 2 times when I was volunteering, but she was just telling me about a whole slew of things. So
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Right.
And, struck up a conversation. Just I was like, okay, cool. And so,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
and I can only imagine what she told you, and maybe we
right.
will talk about certain topics, but we'll find out. But like, at that same gathering where I was trying to talk about the documentary, I was also told
Oh,
about something that happened in my area where and again, like, this is like a trigger warning just in case, like, we will be talking about possible crimes and things like that. I'm about to talk about a crime that scared me,
mm,
where a young girl was shot at railroad tracks. And I'm
mm,
not sure if they took her car or not, but she was 21.
wow.
It's random. They believe it to be gang violence or something like that. And first of all, I didn't ask to be told that.
Mm,
I was just sitting among friends, just trying to eat some chili. And I'm being told about something that personally I would have never known about unless it's only come up once on a TikTok. And it actually wasn't even the whole details about the
mhm,
crime. I'm off of Facebook at the moment. Maybe I would have saw it there. But
uh-huh,
truly, like, I don't watch the news. Like, I choose to watch these documentaries because, for me personally, and if people are like, why would you watch these things? Maybe now that we're talking about it, I think I personally do because I do call myself a spiritual teacher, and I'm actually dialing away from that currently. I just kind of like to call myself a holistic living coach, where I want to talk to people about living more holistically, and that includes spirituality but also includes other things. Basically because I don't like I just think it's always to keep myself in check.
mm,
Personally, I like to see where these people end up because I have told people over and over and they disagree with me, but I tell them, I was like, I don't think like these gurus and like these spiritual teachers started off evil. I just do not think that. Part of me just doesn't think it.
mm,
I believe that maybe they felt like they had something that could help people. They also felt like this pressure of like if they were going to help people that they also needed to monetize it, which is a like real life thing. Everybody here in the world is telling us you should be charging for this. You should do this for this amount of money. You should be running this course. You should be doing this. When really all I was trying to do is like help people. And so when you start to do that, I think it just starts in these realms where you claim to be channelers, tarot readers, and connections with the spirit realm. I do see it. I see it almost all the time. Readers just doubling down on their claims, and I'm just like, you're talking about things that you think and you maybe do, but to talk about it so confidently, I don't do that. Because you just don't know who you're encountering at what time. And so that's why I personally watch it. So maybe I should stop encouraging others, but that's personally why I feel the need to watch it, is to always remind myself, Ray, like there's a line. There's a line around here. It's okay to help people, but people go off in the deep ends. And I've
mm,
watched all the things. I've seen I've listened to all the podcasts about it. People really do, at some point it could have been helping, and then they start to just help themselves exclusively, and it becomes bad. It becomes
mm,
evil in certain cases, and I hate to say that because I actually don't use that word a lot. I really don't. I don't like that word evil, but I just can't imagine. It was so hard to watch this lady take the lives of her children because some man claimed to be in touch with God and labeled her kids dark. It makes me scared for people that believe these kinds of people. And that's why I do want people to be educated
mm,
around it, especially in spiritual communities where there's no like we have no Bible. We have no collective there's no one to go through that's like the person to go through a lot of times. Um Everybody's making up their own stuff. And that's not, or, getting their own information, which I'm not dissing that, but also people can say whatever they want and people could believe it. But yeah, going back to, I actually try not to look at crime. a lot. I try not to stay up to date with all that, and then it just like you were saying, just sometimes you're in a space and you're like, "Well, I guess they're talking about this. I didn't ask to hear about this, but here we are." You know?
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, so I feel like on some resonance, it's a, I guess just to talk about it, that's part of, I tend to, and this is me getting personal about it, I tend to select um content that supports my vision. And so let's say, anywho, I'm gonna talk it out. Like usually I like to think about things in depthly, but so let's say, okay, YouTube, let's go back to YouTube. I could spend endless amounts, not endless, but I could spend hours on YouTube watching things for entertainment, watching comedic material, which, I watch funny things that make me laugh on YouTube. And then also, too, I could um, watch talks, lectures, discussions, insights, or film about evolution, other things that uh, support some of my hobbies, or I could be learning new things. I could use YouTube in an educational way. And so, uh, if I put things on a spectrum and let's say, okay, I might watch comedic things or entertainment material, say 10% of the time or 20% of the time, but then I may want to select videos of material that kind of push me towards my goals 80% of the time, um, then that's another also possibility or realm of reasons of why to be selective about the content that I'm exposing myself to, or that that I'm putting in front of me or putting myself in front of. Just because, again, I didn't say again, but yeah, there's brain power there. There's energy. So it's almost like I remember recently having a discussion. I know I had it with my best friend, but I can't remember if we had it as well. And there's a teacher out there named Don DePani. And so if anyone listeners want to go look him up, he's um if one wants to use the term a guru, but he's a spiritual teacher, and his angle on what his specialty is, at least from my interpretation, what he's good at, is about focus. And so his practice and part of his process is um, the energy flows where the attention goes, energy flows, or something like that. Yeah. And so he gets people in the habit of, noticing where's their energy going, where's their attention going. He also has a talk up on YouTube where he talks about giving people the perspective, or at least having a paradigm shift to think of their energy like money. So say, for instance, and you might be able to resonate with this, Ray, because you're pretty budget friendly. You're pretty cognizant of where your money goes and this, that, and the third.
Yeah, for people that weren't watching, right, when he said your energy's like money, I was like, and I'm like, okay, I'm into this one.
And so he often shares in his talk. So he'll say, one person might budget or balance or channel their money in a bank account or their resources, but won't do the same thing with their energy. And so, he'll even go into a talk or break it down and say, okay, we have, just for conversation's sake, we have 24 hours in a day. And just in a normal setting or situation, or on the average person, if they work an average job, they probably work 7 to 8 hours a day at their job. Um, on top of that, they probably sleep on average 7 to 8 hours. So that's about 16 hours. That's not including time, travel time. That's not including eating, showering, and all these other sort of things. So realistically, let's just say that's 16 hours. Let's say we block out 4 hours for travel, to and from work, shower, getting something to eat, preparing dinner, all this other good stuff. So technically, somebody only has about 3 to 4 hours a day for something. And in prioritizing, or say which ones, okay, if someone wants to take those 3 or 4 hours and be like, okay, I just want to chillax or consume, or what do I want to consume? Do I want to work towards evolving and growing? Am I tired from the workday? Is evolution not really my purpose? That's not really my goal or my focus. Like, I just want to live life and have fun. I want to play sports. I want to watch the beauty channel. I just want to do a numbness, mindless. I want to be at the bar, shooting pool, playing, whatever. And so he just gets people in that pattern, that habit of thinking about, okay, what am I doing with, okay, let's just take it back. Like, okay, I really only have a finite amount of time or finite amount of resources. And even more so in my case, I'm aware from listening to him, at a certain time, especially when one gets older, my brain shuts down at a certain hour. I might still be up like for 2-3 hours, but that doesn't mean I'm optimally functioning. I have an optimally functioned brain to where I want to do important tasks during those hours. And so even taking all that into consideration. So again, I would say it kind of varies based off of what someone feels their purpose is in life, or what someone's goals and intentions are in life. But if one is on that path towards self-development, self-growth, awareness, expansion, evolution, all this good stuff, which usually his audience, if they're at one of his, lectures or events, usually they're buying his book. And I guess in a way that's a little bit of plug. He does just have a new book that came out. Um, yeah, there are going to be that is going to be that audience to be like, dang, I do want to be conscious and be aware about where I'm putting my energy, where I'm putting my energy, and B, where I'm putting, or maybe A, where I'm putting my attention. And because either way, they're interchangeable. Because again, his premise or his narrative is that where the attention goes, or the energy flows. So again, I want to put at least that piece of the energy into something that at least I've decided, or I've chosen through examination or whatever course, that this is going to benefit me. And so again, I think like we even talked about before we started recording, I'm okay if somebody else wants to go watch this, the Saints game. I live in New Orleans, so Sunday football, but I'm sure this is everywhere. Sunday NFL football, that's people's thing, and for years that was my thing too. But then I grew out of it, and it's just, Sundays are a quiet, restful day for me. Actually, I feel I could get a lot done because a lot of people are tied into football. So they're not as active and out and about doing stuff. So I can get many things done on a Sunday because people's attention and energy is consumed up into sports at that time, because that's where their focus is. And then so yeah, and so that's what I have to say about it at this time, at this point.
Okay. So like as you were saying that, something was coming to mind of like, when it comes to like health, it's probably good to like look into, or I know a lot of people that will look into how to stay healthy. Like maybe what's the ideal amount of like cardio to do, or how much water to drink in a day. And like some of that takes some extra resource because that's like maybe their interest in things like that. I also feel like as I was like, why was that coming to me while you were saying that, is because maybe part of me feels that not looking into certain things could be somewhat, I don't want to use this word, but I'm just going to use it because I don't have a better one, somewhat like dangerous, like if there's some really real things that are happening, like that there's a line between just being a little more educated about it and versus ignoring it altogether. Does that make sense? Like if you're going to engage like in spiritual practices and look at people in the spiritual community, it's good to at least be educated on how they can be manipulating you, versus what I probably do is the more extreme side of just like I research it to the bone, basically, for my own well-being, because that is my line of work, or that was my line of work that I was going down. And it made me want to pause because I was like, I just don't know if I don't know that I will not turn in that person. I don't even want to take that risk. Where some people have told me, well, just stop watching it because that's not going to be you. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you don't get to know that. You don't get to know how far that goes, So for me, I mean, maybe I see. I wonder what was in your head just then, but also but you see, I guess part of me, even though I look into it a lot because I choose to do that, I guess I want to argue a little bit on maybe not watching it all the time, but at least being educated about not just like spirituality, but even though I don't want to look at the crime going on in my city and maybe in a nearby city that's very close by that I have family and friends in, there's like real things going on. So at least being aware of something versus not looking at it at all and pretending like it's not happening. And maybe people aren't pretending like it's not happening. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that's my interpretation of it. Um, and I guess I will say I was on that side though. I didn't like to look at crime. I don't want to know about that. And I guess I was kind of annoyed because honestly, I will just share. It's kind of sad. I took a nap today before this recording and I was crying because my boyfriend has to go down to New Orleans twice this week and I do not want him to go. Just because and I have not looked at anything in the news. I've had people in Colorado texting me and being like, Ray, you're New Orleans, because they think everybody in Louisiana lives in New Orleans, by the way, just to say that. But they're concerned for me because people in Colorado are hearing about what's going on in New Orleans. And I'm like, I can't stay away from it. And so yeah, I cried today because I am upset and I'm not even seeking out this information. It's being given to me all the time. So part of me is like, this was something I've always tried to avoid. And now it feels like it's getting closer and closer to where you can't even decide whether you want to look for it on the news or through, like, I don't even have to go searching for it. It's finding me, it feels like at this point. But to go back to what I was saying, it's like we look up health information about how to keep our bodies well. And like, we'll research these areas of like cryptocurrency and things like that to learn the do's and don'ts of that. And it seems like there's lines being drawn in like these other areas. It's like, oh, I just want to believe this about this area though. And I don't want to look at this part of this area. And that could be my perception again. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I really do have to, well, I'm gonna just talk this out, right? Mm-hmm. So again, right, I keep saying that we're on a podcast, so of course I'm talking it out. So I like to use the I statements. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I like to use I statements is because if I'm talking about energy and attention and awareness, it helps reel some of that energy back into myself. Mm-hmm. And there was just a recent example about it as well too. Anywho, I like to me, I statements help, or speaking in first person helps me take ownership, but also helps me realize that whatever story or narrative that may be playing in my head or perception about the world may not be true. Almost like you're saying, right. It may just be your perception.
Right.
And so there's this cool line. There was a movie by Will Smith. It was called, I think it was called After Earth. But one of the taglines so basically in the movie, Will Smith is, they're going to some foreign planet. I think it's supposed to be some version of Earth that was destroyed or something. And they get in a plane crash. And then, so Will Smith's son, Jaden, is also in the film. And so Will Smith gets injured, and then Jaden has to navigate the Earth, or the uncharted planet, so they can get rescued and get saved, and this, that, and the third. So Jaden's out there navigating the planet all by himself, but he's always connected to his dad via a headset or via some type of communication device that they have. And so Jaden's encountering all these animals and these things and all these just different scenarios. And the whole time Will is like coaching him through it. And one of the taglines from that movie that always stuck with me that I love, he would remind Jaden that he says, there's a difference between fear and danger. And so like often there'll be a scene or a setting, and Jaden may be fearful and maybe like caught up in his emotions and caught up in whatever narrative, a story, or his perceptions, his sensory perception at the time. But then he'd still have the voice or the message from Will, from his dad, of like, hey, there's a difference. Again, like he like snap him up out of the fear component, because again, fear, whether we're talking spiritual or just in general, can paralyze people, can like really cause people to cause harm and cause danger. I mean, cause damage.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, okay, just tap into danger. Let me assess this from a very basic, normalized, from a calmer space, or from a more intelligent, intellectual space. Then getting caught up in the emotions of the scenario or again, whatever story narrative is running, and we're kind of running rampant in his psyche. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. I only watched it once, but again, it still stuck with me. Because again, throughout the whole series, Will is coaching, and then actually, finally, Jayden comes into his own and gains his own strength and his confidence to where, yeah, he's clear. He's more clear about how to move, how to operate, how to navigate, because he's experienced this, and he's present. He can tap into that clarity about situations, which in the movie his dad was well known for. His dad was famous for, amongst their community or whatever, for being the best. I don't know if it was a soldier or if it was just a best tactical person. And so, yeah, so I would even say the same thing about what we're talking about here with media in New Orleans and this, that, and the third. And I remember I was at a location at one point, slightly out of town, and a guy had lived here, and he was concerned. Anywho, he expressed some concern about the city as well, because he had been watching the news. And I'm like, okay. And I'm already aware, again, that the news carries a certain narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, even when I was in my early 20s, it's still out there. I can't remember if I think it's a digital page, a website called positivenews.com or something like that. But on this site, they report all the, like, not all the, but they do a really good job at like reporting the people who got rescued, the people who volunteered, the people who just did all these really good deeds in the community, and are actually doing positivity and safety and comfort and evolution and growth. And when I say evolution, I just mean they're just making the world a better place. And they're really giving their energy and attention and focus to make the world a better place. Now, does that mean nothing bad is going to happen? Nothing tragic is going to happen? No, they'll deal with the tragedy when and if it occurs. But to utilize energy excessively, I don't want to say not to be unintelligent, but to excessively utilize energy, especially based from a place of fear, A, it won't accomplish their goal. And then B, yeah, usually, and I'll use this example as well too. One good thing about meditation is that there are statistics out there that show, okay, let's just say somebody gets shot by a gun wound. There's statistics that say most people, when they get shot, they don't die from the injury from the gun wound. They die from their body going into shock from being shot with a gun. So they can't, their muscles, their nervous system, all that cannot calm down enough, or their senses get so hyped up enough to where they go into more like a panic attack or something like that, versus actually getting shot from the bullet wound, dying from the bullet wound. And so in those type of scenarios, it's helpful to, again, even if something dangerous does happen or occur, or there's a sense of danger, I mean, yes, to still be able to be calm, navigate it. And I would say like 9 times out of 10, well, I'm not going to say that, but anywho, I'll just wrap it up here as far as this sharing, is that I told the guy out of town, I was like, yeah, if the news had a fair and equal balance representation of what actually went on in the city, or what went on in the world for even that matter, I'd
Mhm.
probably watch it, because then
Right.
I could say at least it's balanced.
Yeah.
But if it's only on this side of the spectrum, and again, like I
Mm.
said, I'm living in the city and I see both sides, all sides of the spectrum, or both sides of the spectrum, then I'm going to give my attention to what I'm actually experiencing every day, which again, I see all ends of the spectrum, especially volunteering. I see people passionate about the community. I see people working, giving their blood, sweat, and tears to make the environment a better place. There's another organization here who, I think it's Ebbs Culture or something like that, but they don't even wait on the city to do any cleaning, because they live in a part of town and there's quite a few part of towns that get neglected by the city, but they galvanize and they clean up their own neighborhood. They clean up their own city. They do trash pickups, community trash pickups. A lot of neighborhoods do the night out against violence, and people go out and barbecue and all these other sort of things. It'd be great if the news camera showed up to that and caught that and projected
Right.
that imagery out to the world, which I would say then goes back into why I'm selective about what I filter, repeat. Oh, this is another key point: repetition. So, um, what I repeatedly put into my psyche or my sphere. Yeah, one time or two times. It's just like a song. If I hear a song and there's a catchy beat, uh, if I like the song, I might listen to it once or twice. But if it doesn't match my criteria as far as like content and as far as beat and as far as energy and intention behind the music, if I don't agree, if I'm not in agreement with all that, I can't listen to it on repeat. I may want to
Right.
put it on repeat, but I can't. Once or twice is fine. I'm aware it exists, and I get it if it comes on, in a party setting or a club setting or something. But yeah, in my personal playlist, it's not going to be on my personal playlist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's not sorry. Yeah, that was helpful to hear, because I think you're yeah, well, I know you're right about that. And like as you were talking about that, so there's a difference between fear and danger. Yes. And I feel like I used to operate on that a long time ago, a few years ago. Up until like I really got my world rocked when I like used to go on these road trips and just think everybody was nice and all had the best of intentions. I was like, oh, the universe is protecting me. Not saying the universe hasn't, but like I legit just was like, oh, I'm just gonna go on this random hike with this guy out in Arizona that I met at a coffee shop, and then he proceeds to bring me on this hike and tells me how he would like he thinks I came into his life for a reason, like literally hours knowing this human, and talking about like marriage and stuff, and told me that he could have taken me out on this hike to kill me. And James,
Mhm.
I've never told you that story.
I think so, and it's just now
Okay.
like deja vu. It just came back. Like,
Hmm.
whoa, okay, yeah.
And
Okay.
like I've been on plenty of hikes. I've done some like I've met random people over the course, like when I was traveling, probably from 22 to 29. Actually, no, I went 29. Yeah, I went on was it alone for a few days last year throughout the Smoky Mountains and stuff like that. But um I don't have that same faith in people. He was one of those people, and then when I started to get harassed by another individual through one of my communities, I just started to have more doubt and fear with people. I was like, "Oh, people aren't as good as I believed them to be."
Mm.
Is what I think I started to. Now I don't feel like that about everybody, but I do second guess people now more than I ever did in the past. And whenever you said like there's a difference between fear and danger, I do like that quote. I do agree with that. And one of my friends, and she may be listening to this podcast today, so I'm just gonna like she knows who she is. She'll say things like, I won't live in fear. And I agree. I definitely want to be that way. That's why today when I was upset about him going to New Orleans for and he's going out at like night, and that really makes me mad. But I'm not gonna tell him not to. I'm just like, really? What are you doing, bro? Like,
Mm.
God dog it. But anyways, like I just let myself cry about it because I obviously have emotions about it. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be afraid. And I do think that sometimes when we have fears, they could be telling us something. not always telling us that something's going to be wrong, but it could be telling us that you could take some kind of precautions. It could be a signal to just pay more attention to your surroundings, instead of just going places and just not being aware at all. So yeah, I also don't want to live in fear. And anytime I do get fearful, I don't just ignore my fear and say it's not supposed to be there. I say, okay, what is this telling me? Is there something I need to do differently? Is there something I could be more aware of? Is there, should I maybe not wear headphones in this space? Like sometimes I do that too. Like, maybe this isn't a good place for me to wear headphones and listen to music at this time of day, which things like that. It's not, and people could be like, oh, well, that's an inconvenience. Well, sometimes during times, maybe we should be inconvenienced just to be aware, to be more cognizant of our surroundings. But yeah, for me, it's hard to ignore my fears. I can't ignore them. Kind of like what the podcast is about. It's called Grace, Accept, Evolve. I accept that I have fears about things. And instead of forcing them down, telling them that they're not there, I think there was a time where I was experiencing pain and I said something like, oh, well, I might have cancer. And then this same friend, which, forgive me if you're listening to this. It's okay. Her and I have talked about this. She's like, oh, you shouldn't say that because you're going to manifest that. And I'm like, I don't always believe that. I don't always believe just because you say something that it's there. I think sometimes maybe people should get checkups. If they're afraid they may have something, go get a checkup. Go schedule an appointment. And just because you schedule an appointment doesn't mean you're going to find something. You know what I mean? Does that make sense, James?
Mm-hmm.
So while there are times where I think I speak things into existence, like I have said, oh, I want to date somebody. And then whenever I said that, a friend was like, oh, I have a friend and now we are dating. But I don't always think it's the same thing when it comes to health scares or just inklings and stuff like that. I don't always think that you just speak things into existence and they appear. And I think it would be kind of reckless if you're experiencing pain to not schedule an appointment to go get a scan done. You know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, if I go get a scan done, then it means I have cancer. It does not mean that, They may find something else or they might find nothing at all and you get to sleep better at night. It doesn't mean that fear just goes away because you stop thinking about it. If it keeps coming up, I experienced pain for 8 years because I had a certain kind of birth control and I never went to the doctor for it. And that's why I was afraid that I had some kind of something going on. And yeah, what if something was going on and I never got it checked? So what are your thoughts as I'm saying all that?
Well, I guess in all honesty, so it's like talking, right? So obviously I host a talking circle. And so one of the guidelines within the talking circle to help create the space in a container is that a person can share. And then there's always a recommendation again that people speak from first person. So if they're sharing, they say I, my, me, or this is what's coming up for me. And then B, another rule or guideline or space is that we're not there to fix anyone. And so usually in sharing spaces or talking circles, or in community sharing, there can be a tendency, or I guess even in private sharing, there can be a tendency for people to want to fix other people. And so, or feel like they have the solution for someone else. And so I'll say, we're not here to fix anyone, but a solution may arise. And so if there's a different person, if I'm sharing my story and some person sees a reflection or feels a resonance based off of what I shared about myself, at least from my own perception, that person, a message still could have been conveyed. There would have been a little bit more receptivity and resonance because that person came to the conclusion on their own versus me trying to force the conclusion or trying to force even my idea of what the resolution or conclusion is, even though I might have not even been listening. I might have even been like interpreting what this other person was saying through the lens of my own experience versus like really just being present for what they're sharing in that moment. And then again, noticing what's coming up for me. And so, um, yeah, that's what's coming through in a way, uh, is I guess in a sense allowing space for people to come to their own conclusion or to their own decisions. And so another thing too we have in there is that people can ask for feedback. And so if
Mm-hmm.
someone does want feedback, if someone does want some insight from someone else or wants input, they can ask for it. And then that way, okay, at that point it's a green light go. People are welcome to, this person wants it. And so yeah. That's just was coming up while you were sharing, or while you were speaking, was just I guess just having space for there being space for people to come to their own conclusions and make their own decisions about, choices about their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And actually I think me and my boyfriend had said something, because I think some of it comes through that the principle of like law of attraction. Like if you say something, it's going to happen or
Mm.
something like that. And I've just had too many instances where it didn't happen that I don't believe in that to that fullest. Like I don't believe it so literally that you can just say things
Mm.
and they happen. And I also think that sometimes that leads to my boyfriend said this other day and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's true." Some sort of like victim blaming in certain ways, like basically, oh, because she watches crime ID channel, she got murdered. You know what
Mm.
I mean? I don't always think that that's what happened, because actually I listened to a podcast recently where this girl saved her own life because her mom was married to some like a psycho, and she watched a lot of like crime videos, and she was able to defend herself because she knew how to defend herself through watching
Right,
like Walking Dead. And
right, right,
so
right.
like, and I don't think that she did that because he was in her life. That's just what she did. But some people in the spiritual community might say, "Oh, well, he attacked her because all she does is watch Walking Dead," which I guess there could be some arguments for that. But personally for me, it's like I really take offense to that when I had a man stalk me, harass me,
Mm.
and for someone to say, "Oh, well, you attracted that in your life," I would say, like part of my friends, but like, "F you,"
Mm.
No, I didn't.
Mm.
Like, I was holding space for people to engage in a spiritual community with like, something very nice that people loved. I had 10, 12 people coming to book studies every week, and I had to shut it down because some guy became obsessed
Mm.
and nobody asked him to get obsessed. I sure as heck didn't ask him.
Right.
So I do think that some parts, I think I am seeing that a lot, even on TikTok and things like that. And I've seen it just in my 10, 12 years of engaging with this community. I love it. And there's so many beautiful things about it. And like, to go around telling people they got cancer because they just didn't, I don't know, just for many reasons. Sometimes that stuff happens. And I think that's another premise when I think of acceptance. I don't always think of acceptance as like, oh, actually, for our podcast, the first word is grace. To have grace for yourself. If you did unconsciously attract something to your life, have grace for yourself for that. Don't blame people. Go around blaming people for law of attraction, bringing things in their life. First of all, at least personally, I don't feel that way. And then second of all, have acceptance that like sometimes life just happens. Sometimes life, it doesn't just happen because, you don't meditate enough or you don't do enough yoga or things like that. So I think I see that a lot too, and that irritates me.
Mm.
Blaming people for bad things happening to them when really bad things happen all the time to, even the best of people. This idea that you can create your whole reality through just your thoughts alone. I tried that and it didn't work for me. At least in that instance, like that when I had that person enter my life, I felt like I was doing everything right, everything the universe was telling me to do. And that's why I actually abandoned spirituality for like a year and a half, 2 years, because I was like, oh, this doesn't work because you allowed this person into my life when I was
Mhm.
doing everything to control what was happening to me, and I was doing all the best of things. Um, so anyways, I think life just happens sometimes, and it's not always because, you know, at least, or I'll use the I words. I think life happens sometimes, and I don't always think it's because of like what I watch or what I don't watch or what I listen to or what I don't listen to. I think sometimes life just happens. And I also can I teach a lot about intentional living. I teach a lot about how to be intentional with your time and what you watch and things like that. But sometimes I do think that in people's comments that there's like a little bit of like guilt or shame, like if I continue to watch these things that I'll become that, when actually it's the whole opposite reason of why I watch it. It's so I don't become that. It's so I don't become a cult leader. It's so I don't it's so I can really look at how power corrupts like almost all the time. It really does. For people to think for and so anyways, I just like to stay aware sometimes of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So, any thoughts? Do we know how long we've been chatting?
Yeah, we got a good time. We got a good time. Um, yeah, the one thing that was and I'm not, I can't say it straight. I can't regurgitate it word for word. But in one recent conversation, someone was someone was saying something about um pointing to the truth and not forcing the truth on people. Like one can only point to the truth, and then that person has to find their way to it on their own. And then so what also brought up in that conversation was talking about how even as people are growing up and evolving, especially going from childhood into young adulthood and to even older stages of development in life, it's like again having that space for each person to grow into their own individuality, grow into find their own way. Like I can share, I can um plant seeds or point in certain directions or give tools and techniques, or at least again in my own experience share my own experience. Yet I can't force someone to pick and choose to follow the same exact path that I did to get to a similar place or location or frequency or whatever the case may be. Because again, rightfully so, this person has their own set of DNA. They have their own set of experiences. They have their own set of environmental influences. They have their own set of childhood influences. They have their own, if we want to go there, past lives and all these other sort of things. Um, they have their own destiny. If one wants to go into the realm of predetermined destiny or purpose, they have their own perspective. And so again, I could kind of see it more like universes coexisting or colliding, but not in a bad way, but colliding as far as like meshing together and merging or influencing each other just to kind of assist in that person's process. And so again, yeah, having that awareness of like, yeah, I want to share, and then I also want to give space for, or at least set a tone or an opportunity for this person to, yeah, just really find their own way. Be present, be supportive, be nurturing for whatever conclusions they come to on their own, whatever insights, whatever awarenesses, whatever heartbreaks, whatever disappointments, whatever fears arise, whatever joy, whatever passions. Um, yeah. So that's the other component that was coming up. Or I was thinking about is like, for the most part, individuals are or maybe finding their way on their own.
Mhm.
Obviously it could be a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit different in organized setting or but even then I don't even think it's different. I don't think everybody reads a particular religious book and interprets it the same. And
Hmm.
then I don't also don't think or feel that people read a certain particular quote and get the same interpretation from it. And even beyond that, even if one had the same interpretation, the application can look totally different.
Yeah.
Like me and the same person can hear the same thing, and I think you bring this up from time to time, but yeah, applications and interpretations of philosophies and ideas and principles and concepts can look totally different. And so again, yeah, just keeping that awareness, having that awareness, even again as I navigate, move throughout life, move throughout the city, encounter different people from walks of life. Certain people again could look at a situation and they see fear, they're worried, they're scared, which again, if I go back to the want to fix something, the agitation with them in them is so strong that they want to fix the situation because it's agitating them so much versus they
Mm-hmm.
actually have the solution to the situation.
Right.
And so, yeah, just having that awareness of like, oh, okay, I'm actually agitating the situation more in this case because I'm agitated, versus like I actually, their misery is causing me misery. So to end my misery, I
Mm-hmm.
need to quote unquote end their misery. But it's really about me.
Right.
And so, yeah. So again, go back to awareness, or even having again grace to have awareness, or have to be able to navigate situations.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So that's what.
Yeah, and like two things are coming up for me before we maybe like wrap up in a second. But like just to go back to like how I'm how I was afraid for my boyfriend. I've already gone over the scenario in the head. That's my thing. If he was truly that scared, he wouldn't be going. You know what I mean? At least that's how I feel about it.
Right.
So all I can really do is I'm not gonna ask him to not go to his tournament in a few days. I'm not gonna ask him to not go with his friends. I will ask him to just he's already going to be aware of his surroundings, but just text me in the middle of the night when he gets home so I know where he's at. Don't wait till the morning to text me. I just want to know that you're safe when you get back from where you're getting back from. And that's all I can really do. And also the tournament that he's going to, I don't want to give too much information about it, but like he's
Right.
leaving at 1 o'clock. It's like a poker tournament. Like I'm a little sketched out. Like you're leaving a place at potentially 1 a.m. at the middle of the night. Like are there cops there? Can you just like can you make sure I mean, are there people around? Can y'all walk each other to your cars? Like just like little things. Little small things can make a big difference when just stuff like that. So that's all I'm gonna do. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna try and then going back to like I was thinking about something like I don't believe in things absolutely. So I will say the more I have heard, and I actually had a dream about this, talking about, the universe talking to me through dreams and stuff. I had a dream that an Uber driver was trying to kidnap me, but it was because I was watching a lot of like I saw a lot of kidnapping videos on TikTok recently.
Mm.
And when I became aware that that was in my awareness, and something in my head said to let that go, that I was only believing this person was kidnapping me, and that's why I thought it. Um, that person turned into like a regular Uber driver. Like at first it seemed like they were hyper aware and like trying to take me. And then when I was like, Ray, you're just being paranoid, then they turned back into a person that I trusted and they were literally same person, same Uber driver, but I wasn't hyper sensitive to the situation. So there, I will just say that it does matter what we put into our perceptions and also just to be aware of how it's affecting our perceptions. I'm very aware because of all the information coming to me from New Orleans. So I'm glad that you shared your side of it and like your your experience, like your actual experience of it because it will help me be calmer. Um and these were instances where I didn't invite that information to come. These were just random people. If it were up to me, I wouldn't have been, don't be telling me that stuff. I don't need to know that. I don't even live in New Orleans by you telling me this kind of vibe from me. But what we do watch does infiltrate our perception. So with that being said, doesn't always mean that it's bad to have. I think you can be cautious. I think you can take preparations. There may even be things that you might want to change about how you interact in your daily life based on what you see, what you've researched, what you've heard. And there's also this side that starts to go into paranoia, which I don't think that that's healthy. I think being aware and educated is okay, and if you want to make daily changes, that's okay too. Like if you find out like having a 6-pack of beer every day is not good for your health, like that could be cool to know. And you start to make daily shifts around that. But to live in paranoid and fear and like stuff like that, I don't see the benefits of that. So that's the line that I think we have to walk sometimes with education and like looking into things.
Mm.
Um and yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any
All
closing
right.
thoughts on your end?
Yeah. So again, listeners, there's a difference between danger and fear, and I was going to say something about there being a middle space in between, or a fine line between that. And then so also too, yeah, if you want to look up Don DePani, let me see if I can find something to spell his name. But he has some really good talks. I like his delivery. I like his story, or his journey, and it's DANDAPANI, DANDAPANI, Don DePani.
And maybe we can link something below whenever we publish the
Possibly.
episode.
And his new book is The Power of Unwavering Focus. And so he really, again, his specialty, or again, his unique purpose in his journey or contribution to the world is about helping people with their focus and their concentration. And so I'm appreciative of his work.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Awesome.
all.
Well, I'm appreciative to you, James, for having this conversation with me. It's very
You're
helpful.
welcome.
And I hope it helped the listeners as well. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, review the podcast. And we have a link tree in the description below to help you figure out where to subscribe, where fits your needs the best. We have a YouTube channel as well, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And any closing thoughts or anything else, James?
Share with your family and friends. I do recommend putting this content on repeat. And this is repeatable content. And just all thank you so much. And again, if you heard anything, feel free to comment, send us an email message. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover or talk about on a future episode, contact us, reach out. Cool.
Sounds great. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Toodaloo.